Greetings. On May 7, 2022, a landmark event will take place on the Creative Society platform that will change the lives of all of us. How do we solve the climate, environmental, economic, and social crises? Find out at the Universal Global Forum, Global Crisis, We Are People, We Want to Live. And now you're watching breaking news on the Creative Society TV channel. Watch in this episode. Record cold weather has hit Europe, causing significant damage to farms. An intrusion of Arctic air in late March and early April 2022 caused temperatures in several countries to fall 11 to 18 degrees Celsius below climate standard. On April 4th, the Weather Service Media France recorded the coldest April night on record since 1947. For some regions of Europe, spring frosts are not abnormal, but it is worth noting that this year's winter was warmer than usual. And sharp temperature fluctuations have made crops more vulnerable to frosts, so many fruit trees had time to bud and blossom flowers. The topic of weather anomalies in European countries will be continued by breaking news reporters from Bulgaria and the Czech Republic.
Greetings, this is breaking news reported from Bulgaria. On the night of March 1st, 2022, a devastating hurricane struck the city of Vratsa, Bulgaria. Wind gusts reached 160 km per hour. Many homes and vehicles were damaged. The storm brought down trees and damaged power lines. The hurricane wind also hit the capital, Sofia. About 100 trees and advertising constructions were fallen there. Roofs of houses were turned off and facades of buildings were damaged. A day earlier, towards the end of March 2022, an Arctic front had brought real winter snowstorms to Europe. On March 31st, the first region in France to experience the impact of a cold front was Hauts-de-France. And already on April 1st, winter precipitation affected the center, southwest and east of the country. An orange level of weather danger was declared in 22 departments. The Loire and its capital Saint-Étienne were in the worst conditions. Intense snowfall disrupted rail and ground transport. Snow also fell in Paris, and temperatures dropped down by nearly 17 degrees Celsius. In the UK, 20-degree heat was abruptly replaced by freezing temperatures. Snow suddenly fell in parts of Scotland and northern England, with temperatures dropping to -6 degrees Celsius. Blizzards were reported even as far south as London. On March 31st, northern Germany was snowed in. After 2 weeks of near-summer weather, the temperature dropped to -7 degrees Celsius. In some parts of Hamburg, there was more snow than in all of last winter. Railroad communication was disrupted. On April 1st, snowstorms engulfed central and southern Germany. The Netherlands and Poland also experienced a traffic collapse due to snowfall.
Hello, this is a breaking news reporter from the Czech Republic. Winter weather has returned to the Czech Republic as well. 15 centimeters of snow fell in the Jeseniki Mountains on April 1st, and then the snowfall spread throughout the country. Temperatures as low as -5 degrees Celsius were recorded in the morning hours. Reduced visibility provoked a number of traffic accidents. On the same day, much of Spain was under snow. In the municipality of Montanui in Aragon, wind gusts reached speeds of 120 kilometers per hour. Such conditions created created a feeling of 30 degrees of frost. There were also snowfalls in eastern Spain and the Balearic Islands. It was necessary to take out snow plowing equipment on the roads of Cantabria, Asturias, Catalonia, Basque Country, La Rioja, Castile and Leon. In the region of Korka in Albania, there was wet snow on the night of April 3rd. Temperatures dropped to -3 degrees Celsius. Thickness of the snow cover in some places reached 20 centimeters. Winter also returned to Croatia and Belgium.
In March 2022, the southeastern state of Minas Gerais, Brazil, experienced extremely dry weather. In the state capital, Belo Horizonte, it was recorded the second driest March in the last 112 years, with 95% less precipitation than the historical average for the month. And this comes amid abnormal rainfall in the rest of the country, which has been going on since late 2021. In March 2022, rainfall in several states again exceeded the historical average. For 4 months, people have been suffering and dying from widespread flooding and landslides. Next, the Breaking News reporter will cover the flooding that began in Brazil in late March. Hello, this is the Breaking News reporter from Brazil. Since March 31st, 2022, torrential rains have hit the southern Brazilian state of Rio de Janeiro. In some places, floodwaters reached the level of 2 meters. Large amounts of water triggered landslides. Unfortunately, casualties and injuries were reported. Many victims had to wait for help on the roofs of their houses. Several houses were destroyed and roads were closed. Entire neighborhoods were left without electricity. About 70 families were relocated to temporary shelters. In the municipality of Angra dos Reis, a record 809 millimeters of rain fell in just a few days, which is half of the annual average. Thank you. On April 2nd, heavy rains caused a landslide in the municipality of Ancuya, Narina, Colombia. 2 houses were completely destroyed, resulting in casualties and injuries of several people. Landslides in the area also blocked important roads. Some residents were evacuated from their homes as a precautionary measure. Coming up next, an eyewitness from Pereira, Colombia, will describe what people experienced during and after a landslide in his region.
You know, I'm from Argentina, but I've lived here in Colombia for 7 years, and specifically in the city of Pereira, almost 6 years. It often happens that a natural disaster does come without warning, suddenly and by surprise, as it did here in the city of Pereira on February 8th. At 5:30 in the morning, unfortunately, there was a landslide from the hill, which is right here, right in the city. It sometimes happens in more rural areas, but this time it happened in the city itself. The landslide even crossed the river because there is the Otun River down there. And so all this mud unfortunately crossed the river, on the other side of which there are some houses. It was like a spate of soil which was sweeping everything in its path, while many people were having breakfast or sleeping. It even got into an avenue that is behind those houses. Unfortunately, there are 17 dead people and many injured ones. And let's say that if you count the number of families affected, there are about 100 families. Why? Because there are families directly affected, those who have lost their homes. There are neighbors who suffered some damage, who were fortunate enough because their houses stayed in one piece, but who suffered some damage nevertheless. And the people around that sector are at risk. They are at risk of a possible landslide, because where you have one landslide, you always have a risk of another possible landslide. And I have to say that there are very noble people here, very noble and with a great desire to help. and before any aid teams were organized or before any help was sent from the authorities, although of course they also responded quickly. There were already many people from the neighborhood getting there in any way they could, to move things, to remove the mud any way they could. And it was a great highlight. Because if you assess the people's actions on the scale from 1 to 10, it would be just 100. Because people were there helping at all times. And how does a rescue service work? At the beginning, it was a bit of a shock until they organized themselves, explaining to the people, no, wait, let's do it very carefully, because we might cause some more injuries to the people who are under the rubble. After all, there were still a lot of people underneath. In my opinion, there is a change in people's consciousness. Some people are beginning to understand that what we really need is unification of the entire humanity, and we need to respect the planet as well. I think that if we respect the place where we live, we thus respect ourselves, and there has to be a harmony and a balance between us and our planet. But currently, we are still divided, and it seems to me that we have to change that. That is the message that I would like to share. It seems to me that this would help us to be more creative, more responsible, and to be more in harmony and in tune with each other. On May 7th, please join us for the forum Global Crisis. We are people, we want to live so that we have awareness. Join us to discuss what we can do to improve people's lives on our planet.
The paradox of climate change is that while in some places of the planet there is abnormal drought and disappearing water from rivers and lakes, in others, powerful floods continue. This is caused by endogenous, internal processes of the Earth. Because of heating, water evaporates and a huge amount of precipitation falls in a small period of time. Flows of water fall unexpectedly, sweep away everything on their path, leaving not only destruction and crippled people's lives, but also a silent question: how to live on. Such phenomena show the main thing: in the consumerist format of society, people are simply not ready for cataclysms. This is what Elizabeth Rogers, an eyewitness to the flooding in North Carolina, USA, had to deal with.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Rogers, and on August 17th, 2021, I witnessed a flash flood that totally turned my life upside down. It was Canton, North Carolina, a flash flood that destroyed our whole neighborhood, town, other areas around the county in one quick, full-on, crazy spurt. There was a point where I was actually right in front of one of the waves coming at me, saving our horses and donkeys from the barn. It just came out of nowhere. I had just put our 1-year-old down for a nap. My husband was off work. We lived in an old farmhouse that was across the road from the river, and the riverbanks were really deep. We would get ankle-deep water where we were, but never anything more. It had been raining hard all morning long. And when I went outside, it was ankle deep right at our porch, which, that didn't raise any red flags. That's happened so many times. So I just moved our lawnmower and bush hog to the backyard because it was higher up. And I had seen on the weather app on my phone where it said there was it wasn't so much a warning as a watch, is what it told me, that there was a watch. But this was several hours earlier. And I just looked at him and I said, "Do you really think it'll flood here?" And he said, "No, it'll never reach the front porch. It never has." And those were his famous last words before it literally hit full force. I went to the barn because it had been raining so much. I decided to open up the rest of the barn for the animals and just get them comfortable because they were a little unsettled. And that's when the first wave came out of the riverbank and went for our house. We'd all still been in the barn when the second and third wave hit. I dropped everything, grabbed halters, threw them on, started getting them out. They wouldn't all come out at once, which I knew they were scared. The roar was so deafening. You couldn't hear anything at that point. The barn was filling up with water fast, and it was starting to do like a whirlpool underneath the stalls that hadn't been put to ground level. So I finally got them to follow me out, and I got pelted with lots of debris. We maybe stood there 30 minutes while the water just rushed over everything, destroying our pump house for our water, our spring, our pastures, all my fencing. It was just hanging, going down the river. We had a hard time because of disaster management. We were stuck in a tiny apartment with 3 of those big dogs that you just saw 2 of, a baby and a teenager for 6 months, almost 7 months. And we paid for a lot of that ourselves because, well, we did not receive a lot of help from the government.
If you have witnessed a climate anomaly, send your video footage to climate@creativesociety.com. A record number of tornadoes were recorded in the United States in March 2022. This is the second year in a row that the country has seen an upward trend in the number of tornadoes in March. And it raises questions for scientists because such weather usually peaked earlier from April till early June. According to the Storm Prediction Center, at least 219 tornadoes were recorded in March. It is the highest number ever recorded since 1950. For other natural disasters in the US, India, and Morocco, watch next in the episode.
In early April 2022, a series of violent storms swept across the southeastern United States, accompanied by tornadoes and heavy hail. More than 30 tornadoes were recorded. Unfortunately, there were casualties and injuries. Dozens of trees were fallen, roofs of houses and wires were torn off. About 50,000 homes and enterprises were left without electricity. On April 3rd, a major storm hit the southern U.S. state of Florida. The resort of Miami was hit by gusty winds and large hail. Houses and cars were damaged. This is quite a rare occurrence for the region. In early April, there were heavy rains in eastern India. This caused moisture to saturate the hilly terrain, causing a series of landslides. Residents in the states of Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya were affected. Multiple landslides tore down houses, destroyed roads, and damaged several bridges. In some places, traffic was cut off. In dangerous landslide-prone areas, some people temporarily abandoned their homes. On April 5th, heavy rains caused massive flooding in Morocco, leaving thousands of hectares underwater. The downpours did not stop for 2 days, causing the rivers to overflow. In 9 hours alone, 100 millimeters of rain fell, which is the norm for 2 months. As a result, several towns were flooded, with flood levels exceeding 1 meter. The water streams were so strong that they demolished cars and people. The natural disaster partially destroyed 2,000 mud brick houses, 300 of which were completely destroyed. No casualties were reported.
The climate continues its devastating offensive. New records are being set. Unprecedented sharp temperature contrasts are being recorded. The climatic seasons are shifting. Severe drought is replaced by catastrophic floods, when a monthly precipitation rate falls in just a few hours. It is time to wake up and understand the simple fact that the climate has declared war on us, and only know knowledge about the real causes of global climate change gives us hope and an opportunity to pass this period with the least losses.
We hear reassuring speeches that if we do away with fossil fuels, the temperature increase can be kept within 1.5 degrees for the next 100 years. Unfortunately, we don't have that time. The truth is that humanity doesn't even have 10 years to spare. And right now, we can't influence the true causes of climate change. After all, the reason for that lie in 12,000-year cycle of catastrophes caused by galactic interactions. Do you have an idea how serious this is? The cycle of terrible cataclysms, which the Earth now has to go through, occurs on the planet every 12,000 years, and it has been described by various researchers in many scientific works and books. The Earth's core creates a magnetic field.
يخفي قلوب الأرض مجالا مغناطيسيا. الأقطاب المغناطيسية للأرض متحركة يسمى تحولهم الحاد بالرحلة المغناطيسية. وانتبه إلى الفترات الزمنية التي تحدث فيها مثل هذه الرحلات على مدار 120,000 سنة الماضية. الفجوة بينهما ما يقرب من 13,000 سنة. والمدهش أنه في الوقت نفسه تم تسجيل ارتفاعات حادة في مستوى المحيط العالمي والتجمعات الجليدية وأقوى الانفجارات البركانية. لا يستطيع علم الحديث تفسير تزامن الرحلات المغناطيسية مع التغيرات المناخية المفاجئة والتجمعات الجليدية. في نهاية القرن العشرين أجرى هارتموث هاينر الكثير من الأبحاث، وقد جمع بيانات عن رواسب قواعد البحار والبحيرات والأنهار، ومن بينها تم إعادة بناء جميع التقلبات الحادة في درجات الحرارة على مدى 100,000 عام الماضية. هذه التغيرات كانت تسمى أحداث هاينر. تتوقف كل دورة من هذه الدورات مع فترات قصيرة بدلا من التجلد، والتي سبقتها احترار حاد على الكوكب بمقدار من 8 إلى 10 درجات مئوية. في معادلة أحداث هنري نشرت سيدني في عام 2004 قصتها من دورية التغيرات المفاجئة في درجات الحرارة، حيث تتميز أحداث الدورة التي تبلغ 12 عاما بشكل واضح. درس الجيولوجيين أيضا المواد العضوية من الرواسب على مدى 75,000 عام الماضية، والتي تشير إلى الذوبان الدوري للأنهار الجليدية الضخمة. قام الجليد بتحديد تواريخ الكربون 14 للرواسب وأدرج في كتابه قائمة بالأعمال التي تؤكد هذه التجمعات الجليدية. البيانات التي تم الحصول عليها تثبت بشكل قطعي أن العصور الجليدية دورة تقارب 12,000 سنة. التعامل مع أزمة المناخ ممكن فقط في الشكل المبدع للمجتمع، لأنها توجد الآن فرضيات مختلفة في صياغة المستهلك، لكن السبب الرئيسي لتغير المناخ لا يحظى بالاهتمام الواجب. لا يزال بإمكانها أثبات كل فترة طويلة، ولكن إيجاد حل لمشكلة تغير المناخ العالمي فقط عندما يعمل المجتمع بأكمله من أجل إيقاف حياة كل شخص. علاوة على ذلك، يوجد بالفعل التطورات والتقنيات، لكن مرة أخرى بدون مجتمع المبدع لا يمكن تمامها. مرة أخرى إذا أخذنا نفس المجتمع المبدع يقولون إنه مستحيل كما تعلم. إذا اقتربنا حسنا مرة أخرى تعتبر جميع XB نعود إلى التطورات الثلاثة مستحيلة، لكنها موجودة وهي موجودة بالفعل. إنهم ينتظرون وقتهم لمساعدة الناس بالفعل نفس الطريقة. إذا جمعنا كل الأذكياء وتوجهنا بشكل صحيح وبدأنا في استخدام موارد وعيننا بشكل صحيح، فلن يتحكم بنا، ولكننا سنتحكم فيه. ألن نجد طريقة لحل كيفية حماية كوكبنا؟ وهذا فقط معذرة، هذه مجرد دورات، إنها مجرد طاقة. هم مدمرون، لكن يا شباب هذه طاقة يمكن تجميعها وإعادة توزيعها. يمكن استخدام ما يدمرنا لخلق، أليس كذلك؟ بعد كل شيء لها قوة، لا يهم ما هي، إنها لا يمكن السيطرة عليها، لذلك هي فوضوية. الطاقة الفوضوية غير المتحكم فيها قادرة على التصميم، وإذا استخدمنا هذه الطاقة فسنكون قادرين على الإبداع وليس التدمير، أليس كذلك؟
Indeed, the creative society
الحقا
is the only
المجتمع
form of
المبدع هو
human
الشكل الوحيد
interaction that
للتفاعل
allows
البشري
us to
الذي
solve
يفتح
all
على
of
جميع الأزمات
humanity's
القائمة
existing
للبشرية
crises
بطريقة
by
تطورية
having
وإدراكا لخطورة
science
تغير
realize the
المناخ المستمر.
gravity of the
يتحد
ongoing
الناس من
climate
جميع
change,
أنحاء
people
العالم
from all over the
لزيادة
world
الوعي
are
بهذه
coming
الفرصة
together
الفريدة.
to raise
انضم
awareness and inform
وأنت
about this
لمعرفة
unique
المزيد حول المجتمع
opportunity.
المبدع.
Join
قم
in
بزيارة
too. You can learn more
creativesociety.com.
about the Creative
شكرا لكم
Society
على
project
وجودك
at the
معنا اليوم، ونراكم
creativesociety.com website.
على قناة
Thanks
Creative
for being
Society
with us
قريبا.
today and see you soon on the Creative Society channel.